Donald Trump was sworn in as the 45th President of the United States. With Republicans also controlling the House and Senate, as well as the Supreme Court, for the first time in a decade, Republicans had unified control of the federal government. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer held his first press briefing to lie about Trump's inauguration crowd size, insisting that it was the largest inauguration crowd ever, despite this being obviously, visibly not true. It was a weird thing to decide to lie about. Inauguration crowd size isn't the thing that matters, and it isn't the thing that any serious person would criticize Trump or really any president for. But this insistence on a lie that everyone could see was a lie was how the Trump administration chose to begin his presidency because, and this is key, it was so ridiculous and bizarre that it immediately distracted the media from continuing to adequately cover the massive nationwide anti-Trump protests that were happening on the same day, which were, at the time, the largest single-day protest in American history. Almost a decade later, and so many political reporters still don't seem to realize that almost every time Trump does something insane, and this has happened probably thousands of times by now, he's doing it specifically to get them to stop talking about whatever it was they were just talking about. The White House announced that Trump would not release his tax returns, making him the first president in at least 40 years to keep his finances hidden from the American people. The reason was obvious. Trump's tax returns would have revealed at least some of the extent of his financial entanglements with foreign governments and criminal organizations, his massive tax avoidance schemes, and potentially his actual net worth. We still don't really know who he owes money to or who has financial leverage over him. Trump's senior advisor, Kellyanne Conway, defended Sean Spicer's lies about inauguration crowd size by claiming he presented alternative facts rather than lies. This Orwellian phrase, created less than 48 hours into Trump's presidency, became a defining moment of the era, establishing the administration's strategy of trying to make Americans doubt basic facts and evidence and reality itself when it contradicted Trump's preferred narrative. Trump issued an executive order freezing federal government hiring across all agencies except the military. Trump reinstated and dramatically expanded the global Gag Rule. This is an anti-abortion policy that blocks U.S. federal funding for any international organization that provides abortion counseling or referrals, even with non-U.S. funds. It was originally put in place by President Reagan and had been canceled by every Democratic president since, as soon as they were sworn in, and then reinstated by every Republican president since, as soon as they were sworn in. Unlike previous versions that only targeted family planning organizations, Trump's version applied to all global health organizations receiving U.S. funding, a 15x expansion of the policy, cutting off funding for HIV prevention, maternal health, malaria programs, literally costing lives to enforce Christian extremist ideological purity. Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics, a good government watchdog group, sued Trump for violating the Foreign Emoluments Clause of the Constitution by accepting payments from foreign governments through his business empire. The lawsuit highlighted how foreign diplomats were already booking rooms at Trump International Hotel to curry favor with the new president, creating a direct pipeline for foreign governments to buy access to and influence with the president by spending money at his properties. The federal courts slow-walked the case throughout Trump's entire presidency until January 2021, when the Republican-controlled U.S. Supreme Court eventually ordered the case dismissed because Trump was then no longer president. Trump imposed a communications blackout on the Environmental Protection Agency, barring employees from speaking to reporters, posting on social media, or issuing press releases about their work. He also froze all new research grants and contracts, effectively shutting down the agency's scientific mission. FBI agents interviewed President Trump's national security advisor, Michael Flynn, about his conversations in December with the Russian ambassador. Earlier in the month, the Washington Post had revealed that Flynn had discussed sanctions with the Russian ambassador during the transition period, including multiple phone calls on the same day in December when President Obama imposed new sanctions on Russia in response to its attack on the 2016 American election. During the interview, Flynn told the FBI that he did not discuss lifting U.S. sanctions on Russia in those conversations. This was a lie. The FBI knew it was a lie. Lying to the FBI is a felony. Flynn would eventually plead guilty to this felony, but would then be pardoned by Trump before being sentenced. The Republican House passed a bill designed to make it harder for women to access abortion services by restricting insurance coverage and federal funding. It's already illegal to use federal funds to provide abortions, but that's because every year Congress includes that prohibition in the laws that it passes to fund the government. If this bill had become law, it would no longer have been necessary for Republicans to have to insist on that annual legislative prohibition every year. But it didn't become law because of the threat of a Democratic filibuster in the Senate. Trump's Florida resort doubled its membership fee from $100,000 to $200,000, immediately monetizing the presidency. At the time, the media largely misunderstood this as being about greed, which, sure, it is. But it's also about the fact that it was immediately clear to foreign governments and corporate interests that they could purchase access to the president. Trump announced that he would launch an investigation into alleged voter fraud during the 2016 election, claiming without evidence that the reason he lost the popular vote to Hillary Clinton was because 3 to 5 million people voted illegally. This was a complete fabrication. No evidence existed for widespread voter fraud. But this conspiracy theory about the 2016 election being rigged, which incidentally was literally the most highly pushed piece of Russian propaganda throughout all of 2016, would be used to help justify Republican voter suppression over the next several election cycles, as well as to lay the groundwork for delegitimizing any elections where Republicans don't win. The Dow Jones Industrial Average reached 20,000 points for the first time in history, reflecting that the market, which is to say the wealthiest 10% of the country that owns 90% of the entire stock market, clearly understood that the next 4 years would see a continual, massive transfer of wealth to them, while the vast majority of Americans faced higher healthcare costs, weaker workplace protections, and stagnant wages. The State Department's entire senior staff resigned, refusing to serve under the Trump administration. All of them were career Foreign Service officers who had served for decades under both Republican and Democratic administrations. Acting Attorney General Sally Yates warned White House counsel Don McGahn that Trump's national security advisor Michael Flynn had lied about his Russian contacts and was vulnerable to being blackmailed by Russian intelligence. This wasn't a casual heads-up. It was the nation's top law enforcement official telling the White House that the president's national security advisor was compromised by a hostile foreign power. Yates explained that Flynn's lies to Vice President Pence and to the FBI about his Russian conversations created a situation where Russia could leverage Flynn's deception against him. McGahn and White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus personally told Trump about this the same day, but Trump left Flynn in office for another 18 days until the story became public. Trump invited FBI Director Jim Comey to a private dinner with just the two of them, during which Trump demanded personal loyalty from Comey. Probably not a coincidence that this happened the day after Trump was informed that his national security advisor had committed a felony. Trump signed an executive order banning citizens from 7 Muslim-majority countries from entering the United States for 90 days and indefinitely halting all refugees from the Syrian civil war. The ban specifically exempted Muslim countries where Trump had business interests, like Saudi Arabia and Turkey. The order was issued without warning and caused immediate chaos at airports nationwide as people who were on inbound flights with valid visas were detained, and customs officials had been given no clear guidance on whether or not the order applied to green card holders. This was Trump's first real attempt at weaponizing national security in order to advance white supremacist ideology. Lawsuits to block the order immediately followed, focused particularly on Trump's repeated public calls during the 2016 election campaign for a, quote, total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. FBI agents interviewed George Papadoupolis, a foreign policy advisor to the 2016 Trump presidential campaign, about his 2016 meetings with Russian agents. During the interview, Papadoupolis repeatedly lied to the FBI, which again is a felony. Like Michael Flynn, Papadoupolis will also eventually plead guilty to this felony, and he will also be pardoned by Trump. That's going to be a recurring theme. Trump restructured the National Security Council. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Director of National Intelligence were downgraded, no longer able to attend all NSC meetings, while Trump's top political strategist, Steve Bannon, would now be a principal member of the National Security Council. No president before this had ever had their political advisors on the NSC. Trump was not only giving his political operatives a role in determining national security strategy, he was specifically giving that position to a white supremacist ideologue. Also, removing the president's top military advisor and his top intelligence advisor from the National Security Council is just cuckoo bananas insane. Trump signed an executive order banning presidential appointees from doing any lobbying for 5 years after leaving the White House, and a lifetime ban on them doing any lobbying for foreign governments. This would have been great if it weren't completely for show. Throughout his first term, countless waivers and exemptions were given to his underlings to allow them to violate this order, and in his final hours in office in 2021, he revoked the order entirely, making it completely meaningless. Trump signed an executive order requiring federal agencies to eliminate 2 existing regulations for every new one they create. This is an idiotically arbitrary way to make policy, but it was emblematic of Trump's approach to governance. Serve wealthy interests through methods so divorced from expertise that they bordered on random destruction. Trump fired Acting Attorney General Sally Yates after she instructed Justice Department lawyers not to defend his Muslim ban in court. Yates had determined that, in her professional legal opinion, the Muslim ban was unconstitutional. Trump installed Thomas Homan as acting ICE director. Homan had been arguing since at least 2014 for the implementation of what will later become the Trump administration's child separation policy, in which immigrant children were taken from their parents explicitly for the purpose of traumatizing them in order to discourage future border crossings. Trump's experience with Sally Yates had given him the beginning of an understanding that he couldn't do what he wanted unless he put people who would do what he wanted in positions of power. Speaking of which, Trump nominated federal appellate judge and Republican political operative Neil Gorsuch to fill the vacant Supreme Court seat that Republican senators had prevented President Obama from filling for more than a year.